Today, Jeremy is going to show us how to use Wolverine for more than just a mediator. We're going to dive into the HTTP endpoints functionality in Wolverine and partner that with Marten's event sourcing functionality. We also take a look at unit tests and functional testing with Alba. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Thanks, Jeremy. Let's see what you have here, Jeremy. What are you going to talk through?
So I'm working today rebuilding. We have the community's put together. Oscar did originally service called an incident service, like a help desk incident tracking service. That it's just kind of a perfect example application. It's just complicated enough to show off a lot of features, but simple enough that somebody can get into it in an hour or so and see. Yeah, that's how it works.
Demo code is hard.
I'm especially terrible at it. I have a tendency to just steal it from other people. So, Oscar, you're not with us, but thank you for doing this one.
Very good.
So, just starting in the program file. So I've set up a .new web API. Start with an empty web API project. Added a couple things. Just folks, let's do the nothing up our sleeves a little bit. There's a little bit of point to this. This is in the Wolverine project itself, but I've added a couple nuggets to it. We're not even going to use the fluent validation integration today. Mostly focusing on this one right here. So this adapter, this is going to add us Marten support to Wolverine, so that adds Marten itself. That's going to add some middleware we're going to take advantage of in just a second. So basic program file. All we need right now is we need a connection string. This is going to be running in Docker here in a minute. I'll start it up in a second. Nothing too much to that. We're going to start with the most vanilla possible setup. Going to add Marten to the project. This day and time, everybody should be really at this day and time. Every tool like this should be using host builder and service collection. Very idiomatic .NET approach now. Add Marten. Add Marten, perfect. And down here, the Wolverine can do it on services. I'm still so used to it. So use Wolverine because it's on iHost Builder. The only thing I'm going to opt into, I'm going to automatically apply kind of auto transactions for Wolverine. That's opt-in, but basically you're pretty well always going to use it. The big one here, don't forget this one. Off of the Marten integration, we're going to say, hey, go integrate this with Wolverine. This is going to add a lot of important functionality to our Wolverine application that we're going to touch on, but especially the Marten middleware support we're about to hit. So,
very good.
Now, just getting into a little bit of our problem domain, we have our incident, some of the little bits of data it might have. We're keeping it pretty simple right now. So let's say the entire state, it has an identity. And actually, yep, that's all good. It has an identity. It's just going to be a GUID. That's the default with Marten. That's actually the easiest way to get started. It has a status. And we're going to track a few things. We'll get them more complicated later. But it has an outstanding response to customer. So pretty simple. I mean, our lives are kind of ruled by, for me, it's GitHub, Jira, whatever it is. Kind of stay on a little bit like Ron Burgundy. If you can open an issue on GitHub, you might be actually get me to get to do something. And then not going to do much of an introduction here to event sourcing in general, but some of the events. If we did an event storming session, we might kicked off of, an incident gets logged, maybe gets categorized, prioritized, might even happen all at the same time. And then the other one we're going to look at today, we're only going to pay attention to a couple today because I just haven't done that much yet. But we're going to follow up with the incident closed at the end. So the state of our system, the state of our system is built by appending events and then whenever we need it, we're going to have Wolverine or have Marten just tell us what is the current state of the incident. So, in this particular case, using a record, so using immutable state to be, this is what we would call an aggregate of a projected aggregate of the events. If you squint real hard, those grayed out methods, the create, apply methods, that is mutating this, just it's how apply an event and how that changes the state of an incident. This is about the simplest possible way to use Marten projections. There's obviously much more complicated ways, but let's stay with this.
So you're using the on the create, so create and apply are how those get mapped to kind of the convention-based thing. And on the create, yes, you're using the iEvent version of the log, so you get access to the stream ID. Is that it?
That's exactly right. Thanks for calling that out. So you can make it easy and only use the event data, but part of what Marten's doing is it's assigning and tracking a lot of metadata about the events. In this case, the iEvent wrapper gives you the stream ID, which is the same thing. It's effectively the incident ID.
Right. And there's a timestamp and yeah, cool.
Yeah. Here. But you know what? That's probably, we'll come back to metadata. So a few more things, added Wolverine in here. Now, when you talk about Wolverine, Wolverine started with life as an asynchronous messaging tool. Saw how popular Mediator was getting. It already had the ability to call the commands messages directly anyway. So it could be used as a Mediator tool. It could be used as a drop-in replacement for Mediator or the official tool. But that makes me really sad because one of the other things Wolverine does is it comes with its own alternative HTTP endpoint framework, right, and we're actually going to touch that today. So that's, I have to set up IOC services separately, and then this is where I add in the Wolverine endpoints. And it's going to do, just like you do with MVC controllers, it's going to do automatic discovery of those within your application and maybe other assemblies.
So for my own purposes, can you say a little more details about line 22 there? What's going on with the integrate with Wolverine?
Yeah, and we're not going to utilize much of that in this video, but right off the bat, that is telling Wolverine to, hey, integrate with Marten. So you have a Marten document store. So that's also going to tell Wolverine that we're going to add a Postgres database-backed message storage. So for the all-important transactional inbox and outbox support that you're pretty well almost automatically going to need for any application that does any kind of asynchronous activity or messaging whatsoever, that's letting Wolverine kind of piggyback off of Marten. So it's going to use the same database as Marten to do all of its message persistence to enable its transactional inbox and outbox to work. Along the way, that's also kind of injecting some things into the Wolverine configuration to add a lot of middleware support that's specific to Wolverine. And let me be careful here. When I say middleware, I'm talking about Wolverine's idea of middleware, which is very different from ASP.NET Core's. The Wolverine version of middleware, it can apply it on a endpoint by endpoint basis or a message handler by message handler basis. Works pretty differently, but we're going to utilize it right off the bat here in just a second.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. So one of the things I've been working on, Jeffrey, you're probably going to make you be one of the proofreaders of it anyway, is doing a new guide on using Wolverine for vertical slice architecture approach. I mean, I think both of us are a big fan of that. Let's flip over right off the bat and let's look at the first HTTP endpoint. So to log an incident, we're going to do a vertical slice approach here right off the bat. If I'd gotten a little farther and we had fluent validation ready, that would be in this file too. But like to name the file after the command, and just put the endpoint in one place. Make this one file. This would be an equivalent of an MVC core controller. Just has one HP endpoint for now.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of kind of frameworky stuff in here. Let me kind of unwind it. We know the log incident, that's the request body. That's coming up the post. You can assume that's going to be deserialized from JSON and HP request. You notice nothing here is asynchronous. Everything's just a synchronous method. Little creation response of GUID. This is just a little helper in Wolverine. You don't have to use this. It's just a convenient way of creating the response. To just say, here's the URL to the resource you just created, and here is the ID that just got assigned to a new incident. But to start the new incident,
it's a 201.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't always remember that myself, Jeffrey, but when we were putting together Wolverine HP at first, tried to get really academic and purist about HP status codes, and then all it makes you do is it makes you have to go be more fine-grained in the testing. And anyway, might need to go change a test here in a second. To get started with the incident, all we need to do is start a new event stream with a single event that's just going to record, hey, here's the incident that was logged. Mm-hmm. Right here, so I'm using, this is built in, this is the Wolverine Marten integration. This is what Wolverine would call a side effect. So surprisingly to me, Wolverine has definitely taken a turn towards maybe functional programming adjacent, at least. But it's taken a lot of influence from the functional world. The side effect. It's just implying this is what I want done. I want you to go create a new stream in Marten, and something surrounding this is going to actually commit it. But in terms of our code here, we have a pure function. Mm-hmm. All it means is there's no side effects from running this. We are passing input in, and we can measure the output going out. We're not using any services directly. There's just nothing else going on, and it's synchronous. So it's going to set us up for good unit testing. But
what is the data type of that start variable? What does that return?
It's returning this iStart stream.
Okay.
So that you can see, let me follow it around a little bit. Yeah. So I've created it right here. It's just really kind of giving instructions to something later down the line of, this is what I want you to do. I want you to create a new stream that's marked as an incident, and it has this one new event. As it does this, it's actually creating a new, it's assigning a new surrogate stream ID. Just to try to impress upon you folks that this is an old project. We put a lot of time and thought in this. It's using sequential GUIDs to be as efficient as possible in the database, but this is what you got.
That is slick.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Flipping right over to the test. Let me look just at a unit test later, and I'll talk about doing an integration test. So without starting up anything, without doing any Docker, and having no database, you just create the command. Here's a little information about the contact and what customer we're using. This will get fancier later, where it'll have to validate the customer exists and stuff like that. But let's be easy right now. Mm-hmm. We got pure function. We can just walk right up to it and call it, hey, if you have this command, what do you do? Start stream coming back. We can just take a look at it. What events get logged? And we can, one should-ly call here. say these are exactly the events that should be there. The record types are really nice because it gives you automatic equals logic.
Yeah.
So this would have failed if there were more than one event, and this would have failed if there were no events, and then it would have failed if you did the mapping wrong.
So that keeping it synchronous in that endpoint there, it just dawned on me how much that simplifies this.
Yes, and that's a first class goal. I
Yeah.
mean, a lot of these frameworks, you see it with people that use Jimmy Bogart's mediator. You see a lot of return task.completed task.
Yeah.
Not that that's the end of the world, but we tried with Wolverine to eliminate that.
Yeah,
And
I was just thinking, I mean, the whole async await and all that, it's supposed to create the illusion of writing synchronous code, but I think in the end, it's anything but that. Your whole code gets messed up with it. It's all over the place. It's viral. And this is just really beautifully done, I think. So that is all handled kind of in the chain of the middleware when you actually call it as an I mean, you're probably going to get to that, but when you actually call it with HTTP, you're handling that after this is completed. Is that correct?
yes, here, let's, hey, give me a second,
I'm
guys.
throwing you off your agenda. Sorry, buddy.
No, absolutely not. No, this. All right, let's start from here. So one of the things we can do here, and this is, as you and I alluded to maybe off camera, Wolverine's special sauce.
Sorry, buddy.
Man, no, I ran the wrong command that was in the memory. Let's just one more time. So while that's running, okay, it actually worked. So we were just looking at this HTTP endpoint right here. So we got a function, it's called post, and it's given a log incident command, and it's going to return a couple things, what we call a side effect in Wolverine of, hey, kind of like a side effect monad. I'm just not brave enough to call that in case real life people come. But just, hey, here's something else I want you to do. So our function is very focused on the exact workflow behavior, the changes in state, making business logic decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's frameworky. There's maybe a little more frameworky stuff in here than I originally wanted with Wolverine, but it's still pure function. It's not actually talking to the real stuff. But what I just did, the way Wolverine works is it generates code around this. And it's not through a source generator. I know because people always get fooled of why isn't working that way. We depend on Roslyn. The Roslyn compiler will actually let you compile C# and memory and build an assembly and use it.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually, it has some downsides we're not going to get into today, because don't steal my sunshine. But the upside is it allows you to do some really powerful stuff. So what I did in the command line, you could pre-generate all this code ahead of time, but the pre-generated code is kind of perfect because it explains what is Wolverine actually doing with your code. Because there's a pretty obvious problem of, look, that's a lot of magic. What is it doing with this create response and the start stream and, that kind of thing. You know how people are.
Yeah.
It's too much magic. So use this to unwind the magic and let it show you exactly what Wolverine is doing. So here, let me put this so you can see them both on screen a little bit at the same time. No, that's just too wide. Sorry, folks. So you can see, raw level stuff, dealing with JSON. It's all here in one place. It's opening up the Marten document session it's going to use. Here you can see where it's calling it's calling into our post method. It's grabbing these two values coming back up. So the start stream, Wolverine sees that, this is a side effect. So I know that if it's not null, this actually kind of applies itself to a Marten document set. So long and short of this, what it's doing is it's using the right APIs for Marten to call document session.events.start stream. Here's my event. Here's my stream ID, my aggregate type, the events, just like you'd be doing if you were writing this by hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's one of the most striking things about this is it is kind of what, I think in the front end world they call these meta frameworks. And I'm curious, I mean, there's a lot of responsibility on the part of you and your team with these code generators because making serious changes can change the behavior of people's applications. But I'm sure that's balanced with, as you and the team find better ways to do things and move things forward, the consumers of Wolverine and Marten get the benefit of that just by recompiling the code.
Yes. I don't know we've had many breaking changes. Sometimes, yes, absolutely. That's another to-do of mine is to have some kind of versioning on the pre-generated code. So you can tell, this is too old. You need to rebuild it.
Yeah.
So thanks for reminding me of work to do.
Could you open that terminal again and just up arrow and show the command you ran one more time?
Yeah.
So it kind of flew by pretty quick.
We'll do just one more thing. This right here, this is actually committing the database changes.
Yeah.
So you see, there is a synchronous code that Wolverine is writing around our synchronous method, but it's dealing with the overhead of the asynchronous junk. I never remember the command line shortcut for this. Let me get back to it. So, and this is everywhere in the Wolverine documentation. So .NET Run, this one's multi-targeted. Hopefully you're not doing that in your real application work. So I have to hold .NET's hand a little bit. The dash, that just separates arguments that are for .NET Run on the left versus arguments that go to your program .main.
Right.
So just to say, CodeGen, I want to write out all the commands. Just so you know where these are coming from, this is another part of the whole critter stack. We use a lot of command line tooling for it's a real cheap way of putting out some kind of useful and important development utilities and diagnostics. This extra line of code, there's another project called Oakton that's part of the greater Jasper FX suite that also holds the critter stack. That's just giving you expanded command line options, and that's where that magically came from. So let me show you real quick. Just kind of give you an idea of what's there and available. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, just even with the setup we have, there's you can see some of the command line options that are already there. We're using this CodeGen command.
Mm-hmm.
This is all put together about 15 years ago. So, are the basic command line scheme. So, at the time, we thought to get command line usage was just like the greatest thing ever. So, this is largely based on the Unix standards for command line tools work, and as if the Git command line were the most easily used API on earth. But yeah, so a lot of helpful stuff there. Just show
Very cool.
One more thing here. This is going to spit out way more output than you really want to see. I got to address this nonsense too. But this describe will tell you a whole lot of information about your application. Some things at the .NET level. Here you can use it to unwind what is actually in your I configuration. And you can see it's a lot. Hey, look, there's some protected information you probably shouldn't be showing. And it'll also tell you a lot of information about your Wolverine application. So, again, anytime you build an application framework that uses a lot of magic, like Wolverine admittedly does. So here are the tools to compensate for that, to try to explain what's it doing? What's going on?
Yeah.
What's happening in my app? Yeah.
Very cool.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Then I think we said we would try to actually look at some testing. Before we run tests, let me just make sure we got a database open. We're going to run one that's a pure unit test. Doesn't matter, but we're going to run an integration test in a second. So, big point I want to make here, again, nothing up the sleeve. I'm starting up Docker for the first time. Database doesn't exist until we do this right now. Jeffrey's going to make fun of me because I'm still using some kind of really old Kafka setup. Just let it go. In our unit test, I was explaining, still, it's a big point. Your behavior is a pure function. I know we have dependency inversion. Clean and onion architecture is just the state of the art for our industry right now. Jeffrey, fair to say both you and I are in the backlash to that?
Yeah, definitely.
So that clean architecture approach, ports and adapter, hexagonal architecture, all of it, it's maybe put a little too much emphasis on using abstractions as the way to create loose coupling and testability. We're going at it a little bit different way. It's kind of a philosophy called A-frame architecture. I've taken it all from a paper Jim Shore wrote called Testability Without Mocks. But the general idea, kind of coming back to our code gen here, Wolverine is going to find the stuff, it's going to grab the command. Maybe we'll see in a second. It's going to pull even data out of Marten. It's going to push it into our behavioral code. And then Wolverine's going to do the work of pushing changes back into Marten. So our behavioral code, business logic, can be a nice pure function that's easy to test. Hopefully you can see here. But now let's go completely end to end. And this is where, Jeffrey, I know you use Alba, so let's throw that in a little bit. This is just the way that I like to do this. There's a lot of different ways to go about this. Using XUnit, got other clients that use NUnit. Definitely watching, see how the TUnit project turns out. So spinning up your application is expensive. So my take is I only want to spin up the host once, even though that means that integration tests are going to have to run one at a time. So that's an obvious trade-off where you might want to go a different path. We're using a tool called Alba that's again a part of Jasper FX. It's a wrapper around the ASP.NET Core test server and web application factory. So that hopefully gives you enough to tell you what's going around it. It adds a lot of ease of use utilities around that to make it easier to check the HTTP request and response and formulate tests, so on and so forth. Just showing you what's going on. And then the XUnit mechanics are always a tiny bit confusing to me, admittedly. So I copy and paste this a lot. But I use a base class called integration context for straight line integration tests. Mm-hmm. Something I think is really important. For the most part, I think you want to run the application as it is. Here, I might get a little cocky here. With very few exceptions, I think you want to run your application just the way it is, but maybe do a few overrides. Maybe you take external dependencies that are too hard, like web services or something. Maybe you stub those out. But otherwise, you're running the application exactly as it is. It's even using your same application program. That's kind of a big pet peeve bugaboo of mine of just years and years of people doing integration testing harnesses by doing a completely separate IOC bootstrapping for the test integration harness, and then having all kinds of false or false positives and false negatives. Because it's a totally different setup than the real application.
Beautiful. Yeah.
How's that for a tangent
So
aside?
that little, can you go back to that configure services that you had in the setup there?
Yeah.
That disable. So that would be if Wolverine was talking, taking those messages and sending them off to SNS or RabbitMQ or something like that. You're just saying for the purpose of these tests, we're just going to leave that part out.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
You might want to turn them on, but a lot of times it's helpful to just turn it off.
Yeah.
I'm going to work on it within myself. I'm just trying to show that you could do some service overrides. Right.
Yeah, I think, you're running these in a pipeline or something. It's completely isolated at that point. You have your own database there, and yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. And so the test itself, we are just kind of reminding you what we're looking at. We're testing this end to end. So we're going to send the actual HP request. We're going to send this object up, and then we're just going to prove out that the right data was persisted by Marten.
Right.
I'm actually going to do it by checking the incident, seeing more or less what we're testing is this method I'm highlighting that actually worked. And all the pieces are together. So, Jeffrey, I promise you this worked perfectly when I tried it an hour before we started.
And it still does. Very good.